there are actually quite a few hidden developer Easter eggs throughout Call of Duty Zombies. Things that Treyarch have hidden in the game, that certain devs on their own have placed into our Zombies maps for us to find, and in some cases, perhaps hoping that we won't find them at all. And sometimes, even when we do, we don't understand them. These are secrets that the developers know the meaning of because they put it in there, they developed the game, but for a few of these Easter eggs, we don't know what they mean. For this first one, we're going to take it all the way back to World at War, Darius, which was the very first time I can remember seeing this anyway. It may have appeared in Shangri-La or Verrucht. I'm pretty sure it wasn't in Nectar and Toten, but it's the initials JD. Now, if you were just a casual Zombies player, you would probably see this and think, okay, it's just one of the many messages that we see on the walls in our Zombies maps. But unlike those, it doesn't seem to link into the storyline. There is no character in the Zombies universe that has these initials JD, and these two letters on their own make no sense. And since it first appeared in Darius, later on in Black Ops 1, Kino der Toten on the projector screen, when the eye pops up, you see those initials JD again appear. And I also remember seeing this on Ted in Transit. On his base, those two letters appear once more. And I'm pretty sure this was the last time, because from what we figured out, although this was never confirmed, it was the initials of one of Treyarch's community developers, JD_2020, otherwise known as Josh Olin. He left the studio on the 30th of September 2011, which was a year before Black Ops 2 released, but considering Transit was the last time we saw these initials and it would have been in development at the time he was still there, it makes sense why after Transit, these initials, which at that time had become pretty consistent, it was a reoccurring Easter egg I would call it. Was it just a coincidence that when one of Treyarch's community managers left, who had the handle JD2020, the JD initials in our Zombies maps stopped appearing? Because it's never been confirmed, this is of course still a theory, but it seems to be the most logical. There have been plenty of other suggestions over the years. Way back in 2009, people were suggesting that this was Samantha's brother, or her cousin was suggested. Obviously, it then appearing on Ted in Transit doesn't make sense. So I think we've figured this one out, but this was one of the many Easter eggs that was placed into our game by Treyarch developers and was personal to them. The next hidden Easter egg that they placed into Zombies that I'm going to show you appeared in the Eisendrache. And funnily enough, it was only found a couple of years ago, like 7 years after the game had released. And when you see the steps involved, you can understand why, because it's not something that any player would ever think to do. You just wouldn't think this was a part of an Easter egg. And that's probably also the reason why it's an unfinished Easter egg, because I don't think Treyarch themselves thought anyone would ever find it. And to be fair, this wasn't found in a legit way. I think someone made a tool that allowed you to go into the script of the game, and through that method they found that it existed and what the steps were. But this was so obscure, without it, I can guarantee it never would have been found. Anyway, what you had to do is, on round 1 in the Eisendrache in the starting room, you have to keep the MR6 in your hand, don't purchase any other weapon, and then have the zombies rip off all of the wooden boards from the windows. You're probably not going to do this on round 1 because there's usually a window where the zombies just won't come through. There are 5 different windows here, and by the way, you don't want to open any of the gates, just stay enclosed here. But once all of the boards have been ripped off all of the 5 windows, leave 1 or 2 zombies at the end of the round, and now you need to place 2 boards back on each of the 5 windows. So go up to this window, rebuild 2 wooden planks, go up to another one, place on 2 more planks, and then when you've done that, buy the RK5 off the wall, it is at the top, and then put 2 more boards on the windows. So every window will have a total of 4 boards on it. I mean, you can see by how weird these steps are, the reason it wasn't found until 7 or 8 years later. But anyway, once you've done that, you then want to purchase the Shiva and add 1 more board to each of the 5 windows. And then once you've rebuilt that last board, you need to quickly run over to the RK5, purchase it off the wall again, and then run over to this gate here, purchase it, and outside you will see the developer Easter egg. It is, from what I can work out anyway, a kind of shrine dedicated to one of Treyarch's employees. If I remember correctly, this was true, I could be wrong. He worked on multiple games, Black Ops 4, this map, Horizon, and because of that, he's placed this sneaky Easter egg into the map with a picture of his family and a heart spinning around it. I mean, you can clearly see how it clips through the wall. It's not finished. This was 100% never intended to be found. And I'm also wondering if all of the other developers knew this was even in the game, or was it something he did in secret on his own? I would guess not, right? Because this is in the script, other developers would see it. It just makes me suspicious that it's pretty unfinished. Moving on to an Easter egg that the developers did intend for us to find though, and that is a cipher in Revelations. Now, out of all of them, this was one of the easier ones to solve, but the reason I'm mentioning it in this video is because it's not a storyline one like we would usually get. This was a message from Treyarch. The ciphers themselves are Easter eggs that I would say the general COD player will not be able to solve. Like I said though, this one was unique because it wasn't telling us storyline information. It read, "From all of us at Treyarch, it has been a fun and amazing experience making zombies with you for these last 8 years. Without your love and input, none of this could have been possible. Thank you for playing." Remember, this was found on Revelations, the last map in Black Ops 3. And when I read it, it does kind of sound like a goodbye message, doesn't it? Almost like Treyarch intended this to be the final zombies map in that story, the Ether one. And almost like the BO4 zombie story was never supposed to continue or happen. It was, because it would have been in development pretty much as soon as Black Ops 3 came out. That's how the COD cycle works. So Treyarch would have 100% known they were continuing the Ether story when Revelations came out. But yeah, I wanted to include this one because it's unique in terms of it breaking the fourth wall. It is the developers speaking to us personally. And still speaking of the developers, there have been a couple of times where they've placed themselves in the game. The big one that comes to my mind is the main man, Jason Blundell, which looking back at this now was unfortunate timing. Let me just show you first. In Dead of the Night in the mausoleum, you can see a grave dedicated to J. Blundell, Jason Blundell. It read, "Death by Misadventure, 1745 to 1802, and it just so happened that Black Ops 4 Zombies was the final game that he worked on. And in Shadows of Evil, in the boxing ring, there are pictures of, I'm pretty sure this is all of the Treyarch developers, besides from Jason and Craig, who was the writer, the main man, but the everyday people working on the game. This looks to be all of the developers. There may be a few missing here, but if you were oblivious to anything to do with development, you would probably just think these were random faces, but no, these are the Treyarch Zombies developers that worked on BO3. There have probably been other times they've appeared as well, but these are just the two instances I can think of where devs have placed pictures of themselves or their names into the game. Now, this next one I count as a developer Easter egg because it's something only they, and in this instance specifically Jason Blundell, it probably applies to other developers as well, but it's something only they know about, and that is the impossible Easter egg. Unfortunately, we are never ever going to know unless Jason Blundell confirms it if we have found or solved the impossible Easter egg that existed in Black Ops 3 Zombies. We believe we have with the Hypercube and Dr. Monty's origins and the first cycle, but we can't say 100% that's what it is. It could be something else. At one point in time we thought it was to do with the Apothecon Servant in Shadows of Evil. At other points in time we thought the impossible Easter egg relates to something else. This is what we currently believe it is, but unfortunately, or perhaps it's not, because it keeps that mystery, we are just never going to know what the impossible Easter egg actually is. It's something only the developers know. So I wanted to bring that up, but I can't really talk about it more because we don't actually know what the impossible Zombies Easter egg is. And then the final hidden secret that the Treyarch devs put into COD Zombies is all about Shangri-La being on Mars. Now, I recently did a video on this, it's quite long, about 20 minutes, where I explained why I believe it is and gave you all of the evidence. I'm 99% sure now that it is when the eclipse takes place. When it doesn't, then it's on Earth. But when Shangri-La came out in 2011, we were saying this way back then because of these two clues. There was this tweet from Jimmy Zelensky on the 27th of June 2012 where he said, "Shangri-La Mountains, ? Jimmy, if you don't know, was basically the head of Zombies at the time, he's left now. And then Chase Roberts replied, "Zombies best kept secret." And also, if you went into the game files of BO1 Shang, the assets for the mountain range in the map had the code name GPZTEM Mars Vista Card. The mountains were literally called Mars. So we've had all of these little weird clues, but it's never been confirmed. And so this is something only the developers truly know. Is Shangri-La on Mars? Is that what they were thinking when they were making the map? And well, just in case you haven't seen it and you're skeptical and this isn't enough proof for you, I've made quite a long and extensive video explaining to you why it is. So I'm going to play that for you Now, if you have already seen this, then of course skip to the end, but that's it. As a part of Shangri-La's main Easter egg, which is called Time Travel Will Tell, it involves, as the name implies, travelling back in time. A segment of this Easter egg involves hitting panels around the map, which causes an eclipse and sends you to the past. But whilst you're in the past and the eclipse is happening, you will notice if you look up, the moon looks noticeably different to our moon. If you compare what it looks like when you're sent back in the past in the game to how it looks normally, we can see what the moon normally looks like in the Shangri-La loading screen. Here in the loading screen during the eclipse, this is what it would look like if it was our moon. But in game when we cause this to happen, it's very obvious that whatever this is blocking the sun, this moon isn't ours. We are no longer looking at it from where we were, from our planet. And it's very difficult to see this, but if you look in the sky during the eclipse, you will notice floating in the background is another small rock. I never really noticed this up until now, but we see two different unknown objects in the sky. The one causing the eclipse and the other one just floating in the background. Okay, so as I brought up in the beginning, we know that Mars has two moons, Phobos and Deimos. So when I saw the smaller, further away piece of rock floating in the sky during the eclipse in Shangri-La, because I'd already been looking at pictures of Mars's moons, I noticed that it looks very similar to Deimos. Of course, there are many different pictures of what Deimos looks like. It depends where the sun is, where the light's coming from, shadows, so it's never going to be exactly the same, but I put the two side by side in Photoshop. I shrunk Deimos down to the size of this rock in Shangri-La, put it over it, changed the transparency, and as you can see, besides from this tiny part on the left where the shadowing is, Deimos lines up almost exactly with the shape of this rock floating in the sky in Shangri-La. This, what we are looking at, is one of Mars's moons. But what we also have during the eclipse is another rock covering the sun, and what is the other of Mars's moons? Phobos. When the eclipse takes place during Shangri-La, no longer are we looking at the sky from our planet, we can't see our moon anywhere, we're looking at the sky from Mars, and we see Mars's moons. Deimos, far away, the furthest moon, and the closer one covering the sun, Phobos. So like the other one, I tried to compare pictures of Phobos to this moon covering the sun. Now this one does look a little bit different. The shape I would say isn't exactly the same, but the other thing I would say is, and this image that you're looking at is Black Ops 3's version of Shangri-La, but if we go to Black Ops 1's, Treyarch suspiciously made the moon in BO3's Shangri-La look quite a bit obviously different to what it did in BO1. But if you compare what it looks like in Black Ops 3, they've made it a lot more jagged, so as soon as we see this, we're like, okay, that's not our moon, compared to on Black Ops 1, where it wasn't as noticeable. Some people might have been like, the moon looks a bit weird, but I would say it wasn't noticeably different where you would massively question it. So what I think Treyarch could have done is because, well, I was going to say this theory wasn't talked about as much during Black Ops 1, but it was. But I think when they remastered this map for Black Ops 3, they made these differences a little bit more obvious so we'd get talking about it again. Treyarch very easily could have copied and pasted the moon that they used in The Giant or Der Eisendrache and put it into the Zombies Chronicles version of BO3, but instead, they went out of their way to create a different looking moon. They put in more work than they had to, for something that doesn't mean anything, doesn't make sense. Treyarch not only didn't go down the simple route of taking the moon from The Giant and just pasting it back into this map, but they made its shape in Black Ops 3's remaster more obviously different to what it was in its BO1 counterpart. There is a reason for that, and it's because they wanted us to notice it, but at the same time, not give us the answers. So when the eclipse happens in Shangri-La and we are sent back in time, the sky changes and we see a different moon, one different to ours, causing the eclipse, and in the background, further away, we see another moon, Deimos and Phobos. But if we know that Shangri-La takes place in the Himalayas, how all of a sudden when the eclipse happens, is it taking place on Mars? Well, I think not only are we sent back through time, but we're also sent through space and time to a different location. And this isn't weird, because we've seen this happen in Zombies before. The map Buried, that was an old mining town from the 1200s that took place in the Old West, but was sent by temporal rifts through space and time to the year 2035 in Angola. So we've seen Zombies maps teleported through space and time before. It definitely isn't out of the ordinary. Of course, the question is then, well, how does the atmosphere stay the same? How are our characters able to breathe? A huge part of the old Zombies storyline involved alien technology, Nazi experiments, Vril, the Vril we now know in Zombies as the Keepers. In Shangri-La's loading screen, we see a few things going on. We have the temples, the mountain range in the background, and then we see a freak atmospheric event, a tornado, lightning, and On the floor, in the vegetation, there is the black sun logo, or the Vril symbol. Like a lot of things during that time, the implementation of Vril in zombies is actually based off a book called The Coming Race, which is about the Vril society. The Vril were a race of extraterrestrial humanoid subterranean species, but at one point a long time ago, Mars was inhabited, not only by the Vril but by people. It had a civilization. And we compare that to real life, we know that Mars used to have water on it. They say where there's water, there's life. It was between 4.1 and 3 billion years ago when conditions on Mars may have been habitable in real life, but because Shangri-La came out as a part of our old zombie storyline when Vril was a massive part of it, compared to how it was involved later on, the idea of there being a civilization on Mars a very long time ago makes sense. If we are sent back during the eclipse, we don't know how far back in time we go. Maybe to a time when Mars was inhabited. Maybe to a time when it had an atmosphere similar to what we have on Earth, which is why when the eclipse takes place, you don't notice a difference. Or the other option could be, because it was inhabited by the Vril, an ancient subterranean race, an advanced species, maybe they created a way to breathe on Mars. Either way, when the eclipse happens in Shangri-La and we are sent back through time, we know that for sure, we're also sent through space. The eclipse teleports Shangri-La through space and time to Mars in the past. And I've just given the example that this isn't new in zombies because the exact same thing happened to Buried. When there's no eclipse, when Brock and Gary arrived here, Shangri-La is in Earth, the Himalayas, but when the eclipse takes place, it's teleported back through space and time to Mars. And then when the eclipse stops again, it's teleported back to the future, back forward in time, back to Earth. But I said to you guys at the start, there is a link between Shangri-La and Tag de Toten, also called the Dead. Not only that Shang is on Mars and Tag is on one of its moons, but also the storyline. In Shangri-La, we have Brock and Gary, two British explorers. They come here, they discover Shangri-La, believing it's a gateway to Agatha. They arrive at the jungle, the eclipse gets triggered, and they end up getting trapped in a time loop. They travel through the temples, they die, and the loop is reset, leaving them trapped in Shangri-La.
Shangri-La, the city of gold. No, hang on, I got that wrong. The city of gold was somewhere else. Well, it would have been if it actually existed. Anyway, a lot of explorers went looking for it, believing that it might reveal the gateway to Agatha. Gasp! Two such misguided fools, Brock and Gary, they got themselves locked into a temporal loop, doomed to relive the same events over and over again. Poor souls. You know, that kind of thing happens more often than you realize.
They also end up getting joined by Sally, who we know is George Romero's assistant from Call of the Dead. When George went missing, she went looking through his research. She ended up discovering that he'd found something out about Shangri-La, and when she read this, she was then teleported to the jungle, where she also became trapped in the same loop as Brock and Gary.
So I started with a simple one. Something about two guys named Brock and Gary looking for Agatha. They finished like dirt. Pretty good start there. Next thing I know, I'm in this jungle, and it's hot and humid, and the sky goes black, like dark black. I look up, there's an eclipse, and these things start chasing me, like zombies. Trust me, I know how it sounds. I've been fighting them so long now. I should be dead. In fact, I'm pretty sure I have died, but it just keeps going.
So we have three characters in Shangri-La trapped in a time loop. Every time they try to escape, they end up dying and are sent back in time. We now come over to Tag de Toten, where we have Pablo Marinus, a hermit who is living in the lighthouse. He's been here ever since this facility was active during Group 935's reign. Pablo thought he had been killed by Group 935, but he ends up, as he describes, waking up from his watery grave. He then attempted to escape the facility, but every time he got further away from it, every time it faded in the distance, it then reappeared back in front of him.
Day 521. I still don't know how it is possible, but late last year, I awoke from a watery grave. When I swam to the surface, I found the German military base abandoned. Only the undead remained on their shores. I attempted to flee, but the fog, it seemed no sooner that the shore faded behind me, it reappeared in front of me. Every attempt I made to escape, it led me right back here. As if I was meant to be here. I have begun broadcasting a radio signal. I'm hoping that someone will answer and come to my rescue. But if no one comes, I'm not sure how much longer I will survive this place.
Just like how Brock and Gary and Sally became trapped in Shangri-La, every time they attempted to escape, they were brought back. Every time Pablo Marinus attempts to escape Tagdo Toten, he can't. He's trapped in a loop in Tagdo Toten, and Brock and Gary and Sally are trapped in a loop in Shangri-La. I've explained how Shangri-La takes place on Earth, but during the eclipse is on Mars, but we know that Tagdo Toten is in Siberia, so how at the same time is it on one of Mars's moons? Now this one I'm not as sure about as Shangri-La as to how it would work, because there's no eclipse as far as we can see. There's nothing that would send this map through space and time to be teleported to Phobos, but when we go through this ice cavern, when you swim down through the water and then come out on the other side, and you see that you are on Mars's moon and the planet's in front of you, when we enter the water and swim through, I think there could be two different explanations here. Either Tagdo Toten always takes place on Phobos, or when you swim through, you go down and through to the other side. That is in some way representing you entering a sort of wormhole, travelling from one dimension to another as you would with a wormhole. It's a hypothetical structure that connects different points in space-time. As you can see from this picture, the wormhole visualises a tunnel with two different ends at separate points in both space and time. Could us swimming through the water be that wormhole? On one end, that is Tagdo Toten on Earth, and when you enter the wormhole, you come back out at a different point in space-time, with the time perhaps like Shangri-La being far back in the past, and the location on the moon of Mars. So that is one theory. The other one, which I'm not as convinced on, being that Tagdo Toten takes place within Phobos, within the moon, and us entering the water and then coming out on the other side represents us coming up to the surface. That's a theory that I've seen, one which for me isn't as believable. You could ask the question, when we come out the other side, could that just not have any connection to Tagdo Toten at all? We just end up on Mars's moon at a different time, but Tagdo Toten isn't there. When you were here, if you look around behind us, you can see the lighthouse, you can see Tag. I'm not sure if Treyarch fully intended us to see it in-game, so that you could question. If it does, as far as the story goes, when Pablo attempts to escape the lighthouse and every time he gets so far and it fades behind him, not long after, he sees it reappear in front of him again. If this wasn't him trapped in a loop, maybe the simple reason why he can't get that far away from Tag without it appearing back in front of him not too long after is because he is on Phobos. Phobos is a very small moon. It's 10 by 14 by 11 miles, or 17 by 22 by 18 kilometers. I don't know how long it would take you to walk that or swim it, but that isn't far. So maybe the simple reason why he can't escape is because he's literally just traveling around the moon, because it's a small one. That's why Tagdo Toten keeps reappearing back in front of him not long after. The other questions, of course, are, well, when we arrive at the other side, there is water, but on Phobos, there is no water, but there is ice on Phobos. Tagdo Toten is surrounded by ice. Depending on if it is sent back in time when you enter this wormhole or rift, could it be millions or billions of years ago, similar to Mars, when there was water? You can use the same explanation as Mars for a breathable atmosphere, or maybe it's just something in this case that you have to ignore. And the biggest reveal for me, the most obvious one that there is something to this, is in the music video by Kevin Sherwood, who we know is the guy that does most of these songs for COD Zombies. In Tagdo Toten's music video, A Light from the Shore on his YouTube channel, if you've seen any of his music videos, you will know a lot of the videos has some weird relation to the map, but it's not always obvious. Sometimes it is. But anyway, on this one, the video while the song is playing seems so random because it is just what looks like a meteorite or a moon, which of course, if I didn't make this video and you saw this, you would think, well, what relation does this rock in space have to do with Tagdo Toten, a map that takes place in an icy Siberia? So the music video starts off with us just seeing this rock floating. It then zooms out where we see it's pretty close to a planet. As the music video progresses, we then see a forest, the lighthouse. This makes sense, this connects to Tag. Then right at the end of it, as we see the lighthouse, it zooms out and we see this rock in space again. But it's represented in a way that it's showing Tagdo Toten inside of this rock, or on it. None of this would make any sense, but knowing everything I've just said, with Tagdo Toten being on Phobos, Mars's moon, and then in the music video A Light from the Shore, we see a strange looking rock. It zooms out to reveal and visualize Tagdo Toten inside of it. This is from Kevin Sherwood's official music video. This would have been an idea of Treyarch. It would have had their approval. It's not just something random Kevin would have done. Treyarch would have come up with this idea. There is a reason to that, and it would make little to no sense without me just making the point that Tagdo Toten is on Mars's moon. Whether it's on it all of the time or not, is a question you can ask, but when we enter what is a representation of a wormhole, a teleporter, a rift, whatever you want to call it, we enter this wormhole and then come out the other side and we see us on Phobos. It is just too much of a coincidence that in the music video we also see Tagdo Toten represented on a small rock on Phobos. So Shangri-La takes place on Mars, but not all of the time, only during the eclipse when it's sent back through space and time. Tagdo Toten takes place on Mars's moon, but perhaps not all of the time, only when you enter the wormhole and you travel from one dimension to another, one that takes place on Earth and one that takes place on Phobos. Those are just a few of Treyarch's best kept secrets. Easter eggs they've added into Zombies maps, either hoping that we will never find them, or not quite giving us enough information to ever know the truth. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.